Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of Lions 247 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Peter Terpstra, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals. By Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group, committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Jack Washer, filling in for Peter Terpstra. I'm joined by the Nitwits, Mark Brennan, Neil Rudell, and former Penn State offensive lineman Keith Goon-Conlon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here as usual.
All right, guys, Penn State, they won a game, 33-28. A lot to unpack. Mark, we got to start with the positives. What did you like from Penn State?
Well, we have to say hi, hey, hello in honor of Peter. But listen, I think big picture-wise, all you need to do is look at what happened 2 hours north of Bloomington and West Lafayette. Ohio State goes in and plays Purdue. It gets absolutely blown out. So I'm not trying to put a favorable spin or anything, but when you're in the Big Ten, any win on the road in the Big Ten is a good win. So to be able to escape from that with a victory and not necessarily play well, but push some of the right buttons and make things happen, I think that is the biggest positive to come out of that game. And also, I think we saw the pass rush finally kind of come into its own. So I think big picture, getting a win on the road, more of a smaller picture, the pass rush finally getting to the QB.
Yeah. You know, to me, James Franklin said a couple things after the game that, one, the last two teams that have gone there Penn State teams have been down at halftime. Two, when he was asked did they make progress, he admitted he wasn't sure. And I think that sort of framed up the day, because I think if they play like this in the next 3 weeks, any of the next 3 weeks, they have a good chance to get beat. The thing that jumped out at me was some terrific special teams play. Big kickoff returns. Jonathan Thomas, KJ Hamler, and maybe the biggest play of the game I thought was the Sunderland strip, and Nick Scott sets him up with a short field. That said, the rest of their special teams really need a lot of work.
What did you like?
Like Mark said about the pass rush was fantastic. I know that during the game they had spotlighted Chakatona versus the left tackle from Indiana, and as that game wore on, Chaka was just wearing that kid out. And Todd McShay was doing the game. I was at home watching it, so McShay is an NFL guy, so he talks about it, and Chaka really upped his his value in the NFL, in my opinion.
It was kind of odd, though, wasn't it? Because he basically where he'd been all season. I mean, it's like welcome to the 2018 season, Shaka Toney, but to have him playing that well obviously turned out to be big late in the game, and we have Yetur Gross-Matos there for him to come up the way he did was big too.
It's like an old record, but as a former offensive lineman, Goon, Trace McSorley, his ability to kind of stand in the pocket, his pocket presence, he knows when the rush is coming, and at the last second he'll get out of there and take off for 20, 30 yards. As an offensive lineman, how crucial is that to know that you have a quarterback who knows to trust you guys.
Well, yeah, he does trust the guys, and he doesn't give up on plays. So as an offensive lineman, you can't give up on him. You just got to keep fighting, and he's going to make things happen out there.
Yeah, hey, this has been their money play for 3 years, really 2.5 years that he's been just been so impressive. And I thought he was much quicker to get out of there when he saw the opening and the 44 and to flip the field as he did. I mean, hey, we're watching a special player who is going to be very difficult to replace.
Yeah, well, we just saw one of the drops, and I hate to segue right into to some of the negatives, but he is able to make up for some of the inadequacies of the receivers by running as much as he does. I mean, if he were not that mobile, if he weren't picking up all these yards, where would this offense even be at this point? Because the veteran receivers just haven't stepped up and made the plays they have to make.
I saw a couple things with McSorley, like the touch wasn't there at times. How much of that is him not being able to trust his receivers right now? Because he's a great quarterback, but I feel like your confidence is shook a little bit when the guys aren't catching the ball.
Keith, what's your, as a player's perspective, because it does look, now is a really windy day there and a very difficult day to throw and catch the ball, as we saw with the punt team. But is he throwing a fastball too much from point-blank range?
I think it's the confidence of the receivers right now. They have like little boogaboos in their head right now where they're having real issues with their confidence in catching the passes. And, every once in a while you got to make a play for your quarterback, and no one's really doing that other than Hamler, in my opinion. And you could see that the confidence is growing with Hamler and Trace, but that's about the only two that are really clicking right now.
You know what else they showed that I liked was getting the ball to Miles Sanders, passing the ball to him. He had 9 catches going into that game, and he was a real weapon for them coming out of the backfield. I would look for them to build on that moving forward, because again, if you don't have that trust in your primary receivers, and I would add Freiermuth to that too, because I think he's kind of emerged as a guy that Trace, kind of a go-to guy for Trace, and obviously Tommy Stevens. But if you can't really rely on that, I think it's important to get something out of the backfield.
Yeah, they had 6 catches out of Sanders. Really nice play early in the game where they wheeled him out. One thing I liked is the defense. Okay, they had the 2-score lead, and even though there was Indiana scored late, the defense made them take a lot of time to do it. I never really got the feel, even though Penn State botched the onside kick, I didn't really have a feel that Penn State was going to lose the game.
Yeah, well. Not positive, guys. It's time to get critical. Coming up next on Nittany Nation Overtime. From drops to muff punts to onside kicks, we'll put on our critical hats.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. All right, we talked about the positives, but we can spend the whole show on the negative. So I'm going to start with you, Neil. What concerns you the most?
Why are you starting with me?
Because you're the wet blanket. You're the resident wet blanket, and you know it.
What concerns you the most about yesterday and maybe the entire season?
Well, I do think that the formula with 4 minutes to play and putting games away hasn't been solved, and it really has to be. I mean, you see the margin for error against these Big Ten teams, especially on the road, especially against the better teams. They're just not able to grind out these first downs. Keith, you're a great guest always, but especially this week, because that really comes to the offensive line to be able to mush a couple first downs, melt the clock, and get out of there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're talking in the last segment about the confidence between receivers and Trace McSorley. What about the coaches having the faith and the trust in the offensive line to run the ball 3 times and the offensive line getting the 10 yards for the first down? I mean, they have to prove themselves too. But they need the confidence, but they still have to prove to the coaches that they can go out and get 2-3 first downs to end the game.
All I know is that after the Michigan State and Ohio State games, everybody was complaining that they ran the ball. listen, there's probably a balancing act. Maybe you don't have to run it 3 times, but you certainly don't have to pass it 3 times as well. If you mix and match, and I think this is part of the learning process for Ricky Ronnie. I know I've been giving him a lot of slack this year because it's his first year as the full-time coordinator, but I think that this is how you go about learning, and it's a lot easier to learn when you actually win the game as opposed to coming out of the previous 2 games where they obviously stung.
Well, with the use and in the way this game played out, it would have forced Indiana into their timeouts. And Indiana, I mean, what a gracious host! The way they cooperated throughout the game. Couldn't get their field goal unit on the 4th and 1 when they had been driving the ball in the first half. They throw a fade in the end zone. Their coach calls a timeout with 12 minutes to go and burns one of his first timeouts. I think there were a lot of things, and plus their special teams completely collapsed.
Well, I think Penn State's, as big as anything else on the entire season, has been these special teams errors. Now, Neil mentioned earlier, they have had some tremendous special teams plays throughout the course of the year, but so another onside kick that you give up. Koa Farmer failed to field the one kickoff, a blocked extra point, muffed punts. I mean, and then Blake Gillikin, what has happened? All of a sudden, one of the nation's best punters. I know that was a tough day, but it's so weird to see this happening with Penn State special teams. If this stuff keeps up, it's going to cost them more games.
With the receivers, I mean, it's almost Penn State fans are becoming numb to the fact that they are going to drop the ball. I mean,
their hands of the receivers.
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? How do you sell this? We talked about playing the younger guys. But you're relying on guys like Juwan Johnson, older guys, DeAndre Tompkins. They're just not making plays right now. I mean, what can you do?
Well, I made a case in the Mirror on Saturday morning. Don't forget about the veteran receivers, because that often has a chemistry factor in the locker room. Most of the problems, people unhappy, start with the receivers on these teams when they're not getting the ball. Well, it turned out to be not too timely because these guys immediately started dropping passes again. So, but the point about DeAndre Hopkins. Tompkins. I keep calling him Hopkins. He should.
You wish.
We all wish that.
I think he should be back there still in certain situations with punts. He is sure-handed. He may not be the best receiver. I get that. But Hamler is explosive, but he bobbled 2 punts, and he bobbled the opening kickoff that he then busted for 58. So I do think he should be back there still. I think he's a good punt returner.
I think they have to take a longer look at the younger receivers. And Goon, this is another area where because when you came in, Bobby Ingram played very early in his career and became the go-to guy as a redshirt sophomore, I believe it was, because he had to sit out the 1 year. But it's a pattern now. We're beyond the midway point of the season. It was good to see them get Daniel George and Dotson in there. George didn't have a catch. Dotson did. I also thought it was good that Dotson gets in there and McSorley goes right to him. So you could see that there was a level of confidence there. But hey, listen, these guys have had their opportunity. I hate to be negative about them, but it has become a pattern, and I think they have to take a look at these younger receivers.
Yeah.
We really have to look at the next 3 games, too. I mean, those guys, they need to step up. I mean, we're playing the 3 most physical teams in the Big Ten these next 3 weeks. And I know we're probably going to talk about it in the last segment and this and that, but we got Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, boom, boom, boom. I mean, you don't have guys getting first downs and making plays out there. It's going to be a very, very rough month.
Yeah. And we are past the halfway point, so still ahead on Nittany Nation Overtime. What is the identity of this team? We got the 3 biggest games coming up. We're going to tackle that next.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and The Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime here with the Nitwits. All right, guys, we are past the halfway point of the season. We are at the critical point of Penn State's season. What is the identity of this team, Goon, as you've seen them through the first
Hold on,
7
he's got to give
I
Goon's
gotta-
identity first.
Yeah, buddy.
Just a couple things. We always love having the Goon down here, just to recognize, pay tribute. He's got his flesh
Need a
socks.
wide shot.
And he's got some sprinkled gray beard in honor of me. And my dad will watch the show and he said, "Geez, you're losing weight, aren't you?"
You don't look so good in your life, Rudell. Come on now. No, what's the identity of this team? I think it's still it's to be determined. It really is. I mean, it's Trace McSorley's team. There's no doubt about that. But Trace can't do it on his own, and he's got to get some help from some guys. I mean, the defense is getting chewed up right now, and it's really scaring me going into these next 3 games. I shouldn't say final, but the next 3 games, the defense better be ready to step up and play and make some plays for, give the offense some time.
I think the identity, other than McSorley, and closing this chapter of these last 3 years with these last 5 games, is that we're into a transitional year at most of the other spots on the team. Defensively, skill position-wise, you're either new starters or you're building a ton of depth for the stretch run and beyond.
I think defensively, I touched on it earlier. It's the reason I think it was so important for the DNs to step up is because if you look at the quarterbacks who are kind of on the horizon, you're not looking at a bunch of mobile guys. They should have the opportunity to really get after some quarterbacks, and I think it's imperative to establish that pass rush, given that we've seen very inconsistent play from the secondary. So I think the ability to rush the passer, we're finally starting to see some sort of identity from the defense. As you guys said, Trace McSorley is the identity of the offense. And Neil, hopefully for Penn State's perspective, some of these other areas are able to build heading into next year. But defensively, they were kind of, I think I said it a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, if you were to look and say, who was the leader of the defense? Who are you coming up with? I know Nick Scott's the captain, but it's not. You didn't have the Cabindas, you didn't have the Marcus Allens. Yeah, well now maybe Etor's stepping up, maybe Miller's stepping up, maybe some of these defensive ends are stepping up. Givens, maybe he's stepping up. Maybe that's the key.
Well, I think they need to create more turnovers than they have through the season, and usually that comes from your defensive end position. So the fact that Tony got late pressure, some sacks, maybe some accompanying fumbles. They did force 2 fumbles in this game. Because I think their defensive back can only hold up so long. They've shown that.
So these next 3 games, Iowa, at Michigan, Wisconsin. I think at the end of September, people said, 3-0. I mean, these teams aren't that impressive. But now Michigan's all of a sudden, they're in the top 10. And we've seen the way Penn State season's gone. What's realistic for Penn State in these next 3 games?
I mean, if we go 2-1 in these 3 games, I'd be very impressed, to be honest with you.
You got to take care of business at home. You really do. And I think as well as Michigan appears to be playing right now, that's looking like a tough game. I know Wisconsin at the beginning of the year was Neil's trap game, even though Wisconsin was ranked in the top 10. But as we've said, you know what you're going to get. Goon mentioned it earlier. You know what you're going to get from Iowa and Michigan and Wisconsin. These are tough, hard-nosed football teams. You have to prove once again that you can take care of business at home after you let 2 games you should have won slip away.
Yeah, they're probably going to, they are favored against Iowa by 5.5, 6 points. Wisconsin has shown that it's vulnerable too. Penn State played against their quarterback in the Big Ten championship game, so he's experienced. But I think that you really need to be showing the improvement that you felt good about up until the Michigan State game.
Yeah, and by the way, when James said he had to look at tape to see if the team improved against Indiana, I don't think it did. I don't think there was marked improvement there. I think Indiana wasn't that strong of an opponent. And that's where, again, heading into these games, you have to continue to show that improvement, not just for this year, but heading into seasons beyond.
And one last thing, everyone probably watched the upset in West Lafayette last night. So how much? I know James Franklin doesn't look back on games, but he's got to be kicking himself seeing Ohio State get blown off the field against Purdue, and Purdue's looking at like a much better team this year.
Well, Michigan
I'm not
State
sure I see it that
well.
way. Somebody said to me today, "Oh, geez, are they kicking themselves about losing to Michigan State?" I say not really, because I think they've shown these last 3 weeks somewhat who they are, and if they don't get it together, there's going to be a few more of these.
You have a team here in Penn State that can compete obviously with anybody in the Big Ten, and by rights should probably be in the mix for the Big Ten championship had it not had so many self-inflicted wounds. But wouldn't you have to be delusional to think that this is a team right now capable of competing for a national title? I just don't think it is. I don't know that anybody outside of Alabama really is, but there are too many things that they still have to plug up in the second half of this season to think that they're somehow should be a college playoff team.
Not to mention the fake punt.
Well, yeah.
Did we go a whole show without mentioning a fullback? I mean,
I don't know.
This is the first time in like 5 years I've been here you didn't mention a fullback.
We're slipping. We have you for the fullback.
All right, one segment to go. Biggest stretch of the year. We touched on it so far, and it begins with an opponent that has a little bad taste in his mouth from last year.
The NitWits are brought to you by Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. One final segment. We got to say congratulations to Mark Brennan, Nitwit of the Week. Let's show the updated standings right now. I believe Mark is in the lead by 1 over Neil. Peter finally got on the board, and our guest picker. So, Goon, you gotta get those guys up there right now. So,
represent the
Mark,
chair.
one quick thought on Iowa and your prediction.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think you're looking at a good quarterback, but somebody who's not very mobile. I look for the Penn State pass rush to really pick it up. I'm going to go Penn State 30, Iowa 24. Jake Pinniger with 2 key field goals. He's an Iowa kid.
Ooh.
Oh, well, you sort of squeezed me there, so I got to be careful.
I went first. How did I squeeze you going first?
Actually, my pick was going to be I'm going to stick with it. It was 31-24. So
who's squeezing who?
Well, I'm not squeezing. You said 30-24.
Okay.
So I'm going up. I picked by a touchdown. Hey, a lot of respect for Kirk Ferentz. I mean, he's had a tremendous career. Don't settle into a low-scoring game with this guy. You could pay for it in a 6-4 thing, but I think Penn State's got to unleash more offense.
We always play Iowa tough at home. We seem to have our problems out there, but I think we handle our business when it comes to playing at Beaver Stadium. So 34-13.
Whoa.
You know, I think this.
Bring it, Rudell.
I think this is a game where it's the first to 17 points. I actually really do believe that. I think Iowa is really tough on defense, and I think they're not being talked enough about this year in the Big Ten and whatnot. They're scary or sneakily 6-1 right now. So I think Penn State gets over the hump of closing. You know, they get a 17-16 win. Not like last year where they won on literally the final play touchdown, but maybe like you said, Jake Pinniger field goal in the final minute. And I think, you know, this will be a big confidence boost going into Michigan, and you know how hostile of an environment that's going to be. But, you know, like you said, you got to take care of business at home. And I think to get the fan base to believe in this team again.
That was Mike Irwin length. I mean, that was a very good
Just trying
prediction.
to go 1-0.
Well, when our director says to stretch, you know, you got to stretch. So that's what I did.
I liked it. All the picks are all over the board. Everybody's
now
got
you're
a
going
chance.
overboard, Neil.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Nittany Nation Overtime. Peter will be back previewing the Michigan game next week and hopefully a Penn State win against Iowa. So for Mark, Neil, Goon, Jack, see you guys next week.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and The Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals. By Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.